Hello, everybody. I've got a question for you, but you really need to dig down deep into the honesty zone. Who has not wanted to face tune your face? Photoshop it, do some kind of edit before you put that picture on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you post your pictures. Okay, I'll raise my hand first. I have had the urge. Okay, and so is our guest who we're going to be talking to very soon. And why do we do it? Why do we want to change our faces? Well, for me, when I started modeling, I was in total freaking awe how some people would totally change me to the point where I would look at the picture and say, I don't know who she is, but she looks really good. Could I look like that all the time? Fact is, no, I don't. And so ultimately, I stopped photoshopping my face and stopped face tuning it for one reason. I was worried that someone was going to meet me and scream. So I said, I need to dial that back a little because the temptation is so great. Well, my guest today is a woman named Gretchen Andrew. No S on the end. Please note that. Gretchen Andrew. And she has figured out a way to merge art, Facetune, tech, glitter, and more to create phenomenal pieces of art to the point they are hanging in the Whitney Museum, which is one of the most outstanding museums in the world. So please welcome Gretchen, because we're going to dive deep into this conversation, into the cross between tech, psychology, self-esteem, painting, and Facetune. Hello, Gretchen.
Hi, Diane. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this conversation.
Oh my gosh. We are living in a world where, I call them the selfie facelift. God knows I could use one. We've all gone into the mirror and gone like this. Yes. Oh my gosh, look at what I would look like if I could just walk around like this all the time. Or those apps where I told my kids, you cannot do this to yourself where they'll age you, and definitely don't do it to me, or they'll make you look like something totally different. Where did this come into you as an idea to incorporate Facetune into your art?
Yeah, so I was thinking a lot about any time that we, as women, but as people broadly, have expectations on us to be different. Sometimes that's physical, sometimes that's spiritual, sometimes it comes from our family, sometimes it comes from our society or a community or a religion. But increasingly, these expectations are coming from artificial intelligence. They're coming from algorithms, they're coming from technology. And I wanted to find a way to have conversations about AI, not just as a force of creativity and possibility, but also as a force of normalization and control, and something that in a lot of ways is making life more boring and more the same.
That is such a good point, because when I look at an image that has been AI'd or, face-tuned or photoshopped, whatever it is, often I look and I say, oh, say it was one of me. Oh, well, my lips now look a little more like Kim Kardashian's, and my eyebrows look like probably another Kardashian, and my, nose looks like someone I don't even recognize because I've got a big nose, and all of a sudden I have this perfect little petite nose, maybe Cinderella, but it sure isn't me anymore.
Yeah, and the Kardashians are a great example. At least two of them now have the exact same face. And
yeah, the mother and Kim. I mean, I just saw a billboard in New York City and I'm like, what? That's not going to make me want to buy whatever makeup that I can't even remember she was advertising, because I'm like, I know I'm not going to look like that.
Right.
Like, is the makeup that bad that they're trying to push off that illusion?
Well, there's a normalization that's happening where it is Kim Kardashian, and the Kardashians in general are the quintessential example of the physical beauty standard that's coming about. But really the origins of why it is that people are getting the big lips and changing their bodies in this particular way is based on the fact that we're so used now to seeing people on little screens in 2 dimensions. And so the lips, for example, like some people think the big lips look great, but almost no one thinks they look great from the side.
Right.
But on a screen,
What an interesting point. I never thought of that.
it's being optimized to not be in our physical bodies, in the physical world, but it's being optimized to be seen from a screen and in a still image. And so we're using these apps and these algorithms and these filters, but then actually going to plastic surgeons and saying, make me look the way that this algorithm is changing me to look.
What does that say about us, in your opinion, as an artist?
Yeah, so in my work, I call them Facetune portraits, and what they do is they show these differences between how we actually look and how these filters and AI beauty standards want us to look.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I see in this is not so much a desire to be beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
but a desire to be accepted by an algorithm and to look like everybody else. There's a fear of being seen for who we are, and there is a fear of standing out as a negative way. Like, I think being an individual is a very beautiful thing, but
Mm-hmm.
people are so afraid to be themselves that they would rather have the same face as everybody else because that's at least some level of societal acceptance.
That's another great point. So afraid to be themselves, afraid to physically be themselves, socially be themselves, emotionally be themselves. Do you think it all ties into the same mix?
I do. I think it really comes from a feeling of not being good enough as we are. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I want to bring up that anyone who plays with these apps or gets lip fillers, like, none of this is about shame for me. I think that
Right.
our parents should always reflect a love of self. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing something, makeup, hair, braces, whatever it is, out of self-love, then it has a very different connotation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it comes from insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
And one way to really see this is men are increasingly using these filters and apps,
Mm-hmm.
facelifts. There was just an article in, I believe, the Washington Post that was about how men in Silicon Valley are getting facelifts because there's such a cult of youth in tech, and
Mm-hmm.
venture capitalists will say, like, oh, don't fund anybody under, like, over 30. And so men are feeling this pressure to look a certain way and a certain age. I think has been a part of women's experience forever. But this is not the gender equality we wanted. We wanted it to go away for women, not to appear for men as well.
You know, when our kids were little, one of them brought home a book, and I think it was called The Name of This Book is a Secret. And it was about this kids were disappearing, it seemed. But why were they disappearing? Well, their parents were sending them off to this camp, and some of the kids were coming back, but they were coming back different. They came back a little, something was off. And so this one kid decides and with his friend is going to solve this mystery. And the school is run by a woman named Miss Marvelous, who they all describe as the most beautiful woman they've ever seen in the world. But she wears these ball gowns and but she always wears these long gloves, but she's beautiful. And one day, a kid's sneaking down a hallway where he wasn't supposed to go, and he sees Miss Marvelous, peeks in, looking in her mirror, and sure enough, she's beautiful. But she's holding her hands up to her face, and her hands are like 100-year-old's hands, but her face is exquisite. And it was such a visual to me. I mean, because like you said, if someone wants to do plastic surgery or anything, that's your business. I hope you're happy with the end result. But it left such an impression with me that, well, then I guess, is there a dip for my whole body? Because my neck is not going to look like my face, which isn't going to look like my hands. But in Photoshop or Facetune, you can create that illusion in your whole body.
Yeah, because there are parts of these apps and filters that also change breasts and waistlines and hips for men, jaws, abs, calves. But what does start to happen is it starts to throw off the balance at some point. Like, if you get lips like this, and all of a sudden you feel like you need eyes like this, and then all of a sudden you feel like it's been disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
And your point about what's happening when it happens digitally in these apps and filters is very poignant, because young people today are comparing themselves to faces and bodies that literally do not exist.
Exist. That in itself is a psychological phenomenon, because I have two kids in their 20s, and I don't talk about them in any way on my shows, and but it's just, I've spoken with them and their friends, and that phenomenon of looking at someone, and my first reaction is, it's just not real. They don't look that way. You know, Now when I see a kitten like doing flips, my son says, "Mom, that's AI." So, I mean, we're all, it's that expression, don't get fooled again. We're all getting fooled in our different ways,
Right?
and our own mental filters of what we want to process. I want to believe a kitten can all of a sudden spontaneously be so happy and do a flip. But I recognize that a face is not going to morph in that way that they're morphing.
It's such an intellectual idea, though, because even when we know that intellectually, and we do have the awareness, and so much of my art and the portraits is to raise awareness about this technology that's normally invisible, to make the modifications appear and to look like scars so that we can talk about it because it's visible. But even knowing all that and spending my life making and researching in this area, when I use these filters and apps on me, which is obviously required for research, I I find that I get the face and body tuned version of me, and I
Mhm.
don't think, oh, I want to look like that. I think, oh, that looks a bit weird. But then I go back to the original image and I like it less. I would
Mhm.
have thought I looked amazing in that photo initially, and I
Mhm.
go back and I'm like, "Oh, you're right, that dress does look a little too tight around the waist, or like my eyes aren't fully open, or like
Mhm.
you tell that I have eyebrows or whatever it is." I find it very unnerving and disruptive to go through that, and this is, again, even with all of the awareness in the world, I think that our expectations of what we are supposed to look like are under constant attack right now.
It you know, I really think it got magnified, let's say during w I always try to avoid saying the word, that 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 horrible, um, dystopian period of life a few years ago in the early 2020s, when who would have believed we were told, no, you're going to relate to people via computers, and you're going to be online to see someone, because you can't go see them in person.
Mhm.
And I think about all the kids that were, I can't imagine if I was a 13-year-old. I mean, I don't want to ever go back to junior high school. I don't want to go back to high school. I was extremely insecure. I think it took me till 65 to really start to feel comfortable with myself. And I don't feel it 24/7. I mean, I have my moments like everybody else does, but I certainly wouldn't want to go back to junior high school or high school, when you're breaking out and all day long you're forced to sit on a Zoom call with your class this close to the camera, because that's how big everyone's face is. And you're not just looking at yourself, you're looking at everyone else. You're feeling more and more physical discomfort. And at a time when your self esteem is a poor choice of words. Your sense of self and who you are is developing. You're trying to get confident. You're trying to identify yourself as an individual.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really great point, because we've spoken a little bit about the way that we've been optimizing the beauty standards for the screen, but it impacts us as well. The way that digital cameras work, so like this is a digital camera, like this is a digital camera, it's different than the way film cameras work. Everything is processed through an algorithm. So maybe it's not processed through a Facetune algorithm, but you have to make choices in developing a camera algorithm about what's going to happen with the data you're getting in. And that's why
It's very interesting. I bet I'm not sure. I think I've observed it on my computer. Um, sometimes, if you do a picture in your photo booth on your computer, I'm like, wow, that has a nice glow to it. And I know I didn't look like that in the mirror 5 minutes ago. But so you're saying all the computers on these, all the cameras have built-in algorithms.
Yes, and it's why if you take it's not, you'll notice when the new iPhone comes out, it's not just pixel quality that's improving. People are like, oh, it's got a better camera.
Right.
And it's not just the quality of the image, it's the choices that camera is making. And it's why Android makes, like, if you took the exact same photo with a Polaroid camera, a film camera, an iPhone camera,
Totally different.
like, totally different images.
Mm-hmm.
And so these choices, even when we try and be neutral, there are so many choices that are made in the digital camera, and they're constantly changing our ideas of how we're supposed to be looking, and they're all different from how it is in the mirror.
Wow, that's I own cameras still, even though there must be a reason I like this camera the most. I've owned Sonys and I've owned, Nikons, I've owned Canons, and you observe the color difference, how a Sony has this pop of color, a Canon has that nice soft neutralness to colors, the different things you observe. But I never thought in terms of the algorithms with each update of the phone, how people comment on the cameras being, oh, it's so much better. Like, what makes it better? Oh, we're looking better. I like how I look better in this picture. That's a trip.
Yeah, and it's part of the whole why we need the new iPhone all of the time. And
oh my gosh, talk about serious manipulation, taking it to the next level that I never considered.
With when we look at people, I would love to be sitting with you there in New York, or have you here on my porch in Park City.
Uh-huh.
The way that we have two eyes, and they're in two separate places. They're not far apart from each other, but when we look at an object or a person, we're always seeing slightly around the object. There's just three-dimensionality to a person and to an object, because our eyes are two cameras in two different places. Everything gets flattened in all types of cameras. And so that slight roundedness gets then exaggerated, like I said, like in the lips or the breasts or the waist, whatever these, or it happens with men with the jaw. People are getting super into jaw surgeries. And the whole Manosphere podcast thing is like really driving the jaw surgery and I can't even imagine. I think they break your jaw and put it back. I don't even know. I shouldn't talk about things I don't know about, but it is not like
it can't be pleasant. It cannot be pleasant. Any kind of surgery is not pleasant. No. I mean, I had to have stitches in my lip after falling down and smashing my teeth through it. That was not pleasant.
So I had a great event in London a couple of weeks ago. I've just had some work acquired by the Whitney, as you mentioned. And my gallery in London was throwing me this big party. And this is what I talk about, right? Is, lip fillers and Facetune. And the day before the party, I ran into a glass door. Oof. And I bit my upper lip. And so my lip was swollen. But I was like, oh my God, are people going to think that I...
That's a filler.
Exactly. But I love asking men in particular, but I love asking men how much they think lip filler cost and how long they think it lasts for. Because one of the other things that's happening in here is most of the men, when I've asked, like, if you get the lip injection, how much does that cost? They're like, oh, $75, $80. Whereas it's like $300-$400 to get this done. And people get it done every month. And the opportunity cost of that money in our lives, is whether it's women or men. Tina Fey has this great quote. She says something like, she's like, oh, when I was growing up, if you weren't pretty, that was just it. You were supposed to develop a personality. But now everyone's supposed to try. Everyone's supposed to be like, okay, like if I wasn't born with that impossible face, which nobody's born with, you're supposed to spend the time and the money and get the injections and do the plastic surgery and change yourself to be pretty. Whereas before it was just like, oh, good luck with that.
I heard someone one day, a couple of months ago, say after getting some fillers, I was like, did it hurt? And they said, beauty is painful. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm going to have to really percolate that. Every day I look for what's my blog post going to be about. And it always comes up in some conversation where someone says something that I think I'm going to have to explore that thought, because why is beauty painful? Why is that even an acceptable thought? Like you were saying, that people are saying, I need now to make myself into something.
So when you say the beauty is pain or beauty is painful, I think about heels. And
Yeah.
my life has recently changed because I used to be someone who never wore heels. And then Sarah Blakely, do you know Sarah Blakely?
Yes.
Did Spanx. So
The Spanx woman.
exactly. Her second company ever is this brand called Sneaks. And
Oh,
she did the same thing that she did with Spanx, basically say like, okay, is it actually impossible to make a comfortable heel? Like literally, I used to only wear Birkenstocks and now I only wear heels because it's just, these shoes are legitimately that comfortable and they're kind of funky, but they work with my style.
I'll have to check them out.
It's just this idea of, I just think for centuries, people were like, well, heels are painful. That's it. We accept that. And that approach to product design of like, is that, what if that's wrong? Of everything we're solving in this universe right now, do heels literally have to be painful? Does beauty like literally have to be painful?
It's a really interesting concept, because my husband always laughed at me when I probably have one of the greatest platform collections on the planet that I started to build when I was 18 or something, probably 13, and kept many of the shoes. And they've moved with me 25 times, 30 times. But now I don't wear any of them, because after I fell, even though the day I fell, I was in sneakers and smashed my face and then ultimately lost my hearing, I'm like, I just don't want to fall again. So I don't like to wear those platforms. But I only bought them if they were comfortable. I always hated to get a blister.
Yeah, I can't do it.
But they were ridiculous when I think about them, or when I look at them, I'm like, gee, did I really wear a, Gene Simmons size platform? Yes, I
Yeah.
did. And
Yeah.
I loved it. But
Yeah.
I guess that does fit into the discussion on beauty. But I think of that as something I can put in a closet.
Yeah.
You know, let's talk about your art. Let's talk about the process of it.
Yeah.
What's the process for your art, and where does art, tech, Facetune, glitter, paint, how does it all tie together?
So I very much wanted to take this conversation we're having now and make physical paintings that show what's happening with these apps and filters, with Facetune, with plastic surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of that comes from a desire to make it more visible.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that Facetune portraits, which is my series, are made is I have a special printer that can print a photograph in paint. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but like when you get a photo printed on a birthday cake and it's just sort of on top of the
Yeah.
frosting, it's a little bit like that.
Okay.
So while that frosting or that paint is still wet, I give it to a second robot, which is given a beauty filter. I literally use an app called Facetune, and it uses the AI presets, the artificial intelligence presets, to suggest changes to the face and body. But instead of invisibly moving pixels around to make the button nose or the big lips, because it's being done in paint with a robot, as it moves the lip to make it bigger, or the breast to make it bigger, or the waist to make it skinnier, we see marks and scars everywhere that our actual bodies disagree with these standards that AI says that we should be.
Wow.
And it's, to be honest, it's a bit violent when it happens.
Yeah.
The robot comes in and it's like, and it cuts and pushes and it moves paint around to make that same effect. And we see how different we're supposed to be according to AI. And then also can honestly laugh about it a little bit too, because the paintings are a little bit absurd, a little bit grotesque, a little bit if you are into the history of art, like the way that Da de Kooning's Woman 1 looks, or Jenny Saville or Frank Arbach's paintings. There's an instability in seeing. And I wanted to make a portrait that it shows both how we are and how we're supposed to be messily coexisting. And yeah, to do it in paint, because it is making a digital process physical. That is the entire point.
And it's such a time stamp on the times we're in, which is so cool. So a lot of questions. Facetune. What did they say when they found out you were doing this?
They did reach out, and
have they bought any paintings yet?
No, that's sort of where the conversation ended, to be fair, because they said, oh, like, oh, we think this is interesting. They came about it from a very open perspective. I think they would know that if they were dismissive of it, it would be very bad for PR, right? Like you sort of have to. And they said, oh, maybe we can do like a collab reel, or we could like post about this. And my gallerist and said, hey, how about you come and we do a talk about this at the gallery? Or how about you have the corporation buy a painting, something other than using me and my art platform to further their story. And so the conversation's sort of dead in the water at the point of, let's have a critical conversation about this, or maybe, put some money forward. But it's, there are some interesting uses of Facetune. I've seen it in the trans community be really interesting for people who are, like, want to be able to visualize themselves differently, and for people who are thinking about wanting to lose weight. There's something that there can be some very interesting cultural usages, but I also think that it's just so primarily driven by, as you were saying, the reflection of our time.
I could see the inspirational aspect. I remember at one point, I think I was 40 years old, and I went back to a picture of Karina Everson when she was, I don't know how old, it was like 1985 or 86, when she won her first Ms. Olympia contest. And I took her body of her standing, looking spectacular, and I took a picture of mine and put my face on her body, saying, okay, this is how I'm going to get back after 2 kids.
I'm a big visualizer, manifester. I think like that stuff is really very powerful.
Now I'm curious, did you develop the technology to create these paintings?
I've worked with some of my students for some of the early robot development. I am a guest lecturer at something called the Creative Computing Institute. And then I've partnered with a production facility called Matter Labs, and they are the robotics experts. They make really incredible machines. And I came to them with basically my janky homemade robot and the concept that I was working on, and they accelerated this process so quickly and have been absolute dreams to work with. They're very, very cool technicians.
Oh my gosh, it's such a wild concept. What is the reaction of people? Like, if you were the fly on the wall, just not standing next to your artwork, but you were just kind of watching when someone sees something.
They definitely spark a lot of curiosity, sometimes a bit of laughter. And one of the most incredible things that has been able to happen with this is a lot of my collectors are a lot of parents who want some way to speak to their children about what they're seeing.
Yeah.
Are interested in encouraging the kind of conversations that we're having here. And then so I've been working with the Miss Universe contestants because they're already so gorgeous. They're from all over the world. Miss Jamaica should not have the same ass as Miss Finland, who should not have the same lips as Miss Philippine. But we have this internationalization of the beauty standard as well, which is part of the absurdity. There have always been beauty standards, but never before has there been a single international beauty standard spreading at this sort of speed.
What a fantastic thought to contemplate.
Yeah. I mean, terrifying.
Internationally.
Exactly. So I had originally started with some source images from the Miss Universe contestants. And at my opening in London, about 6 months ago, we saw on the RSVP list that Miss Great Britain had RSVP'd to come to the opening, and so I don't know her, like my gallerist didn't, like, she had read about the work in press, and we were nervous. I mean, to be honest, we were just like, what is she going to think of sort of drawing her body? And, she's gorgeous, right? Like, she's Miss Great Britain. Like, she's like stunning. And, and she just came, and she was so generous and so encouraging. And what I discovered, Miss Jamaica then came to my New York show, and I've been in touch with Miss Pakistan and all of these other women because they sent it around their group chat of Miss Contestants. And what I realized is that there's nobody who knows more than them how absurd this is, because they spend their whole lives training for this competition, and they know that they're gorgeous, but yet there's still this feeling like they should be different. And, I spoke with a man who's a coach for Miss Universe contestants, and he said that fans will actually take photos from the competition, Facetune the photos, and then post them on their Instagram. Which, like,
fans will do that.
Like so,
contestants?
Yes, like, can you, like, so there's Facetuning yourself, and then there's somebody else Facetuning you before they post it. And I just think that is like,
well, that's funny, because that's what you learn. Like, anybody who's ever worked as a model experiences that. Like, I've seen campaigns. I mean, I remember one of my first ones, my husband said, couldn't they have made you look a little younger? But I was 56 and they cast me as the 70-year-old chic woman. So, they softened the picture, but they kept every wrinkle in a big way. Then there are other times where you'll look at a picture and you'll say, wow, she's really looking good. And she's never looked like that in her life. But it's you, but it's not you.
There's a strange thing with, there's almost been a democratization of these tools. It used to be a specialist skill that models had it, celebrities had it done, and now anybody can have it done.
Yeah.
And it almost creates a beauty arms race, though, where how are models and celebrities supposed to look that much better if everyone else can, like, look that much better? If, like, I'm even getting like laser facials now, like, if that's the standard is increasing and increasing as a result.
That's, yeah. Ooh. Have you ever had somebody say, can I send you my picture, Gretchen? And can I, have you do a custom one of me?
Yeah, I do commissions.
You do? Commissions, that's the word I couldn't think of.
And it's really interesting. I just did my first Facetune family portrait.
Oh my God.
So I have to tell you about this. So basically,
that's hilarious.
I was talking to a collector of mine who's from Korea, and she was telling me that when they get family photos done, that everyone gets Facetuned automatically. And it's like, it's not something you opt into. It would be something you would have to opt out of. But then you get 3 generations of women, all who look 25 in the same photo. And it's a little bit different, but everyone has the skin of a 25-year-old.
But it's like the new billboards with what's the mother Kardashian? I can't think of her name.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, she looks like one of the daughters right now.
Yeah, like exactly like Kim. And so I started this process where I take the initial photo, I go spend a couple of days with the family. I just did this great one in Munich where we talk about what the algorithm is going to destroy. So it's going to destroy, in a portrait, we're usually trying to capture a likeness. But these algorithms, these filters, systematically annihilate likeness. They make us, anything that looks like us, they take away. So what can we do in taking the initial photo that allows the family to preserve itself? So what the algorithm doesn't touch, where you are, what jewelry you have on, objects that you have, but also how you interact with each other. Like if your arms around each other, if you're hugging or you're laughing, there is partially a defense that we can build against the algorithm. And so we went through this whole great process. The baby got Facetuned, the baby got given extra hair because it thought it was like a balding man. And this end result was really in this tradition of the Sainsbury family used to commission Francis Bacon, and Gertrude Stein used to commission Picasso. So portraits aren't always meant to glorify the way someone looks, there's a glorification of the collector who's doing this now because they're so engaged with these topics. And it was the same for Francis Bacon and for Picasso.
Yeah. What do you think the trend will be as this keeps, well, first of all, the trend with your art, the trend with how this is going to continue to unfold within society?
Okay, let's start with society. So let's take this to the absurd end where we all have the same face. And when I'm sitting in a nursing home, I plan to be the only person at the bridge table who doesn't have the exact same face.
Did you ever see that episode in the Twilight Zone?
No, but it sounds like one I need to watch.
Oh my gosh. I can't remember the name of it. It's one of my absolute favorite ones. And it's this gorgeous woman, and she's talking to someone you don't see. She's absolutely stunning, 1960s or whatever Rod Serling year was.
Mm.
And they're saying to her, don't worry, you'll feel so much better after the surgery. Everything's going to be better, and she's like, oh, I'm just so sorry. I don't want to look like, I don't want, but you're not really sure, like, what's the surgery for? But she's resisting it on some level. Well, ultimately, the whole episode as it gets further along, you start to see all the doctors and nurses, and you realize everyone in society basically looks like, the only way I can describe it is a form of a pig.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So instead of having the differences in beauty, they decided, okay, we're just going to make everyone look like this, and that's going to solve all the problems.
So exactly. So in a world in which everybody has this face, I mean, scarcity and value have always been correlated. So maybe the person who doesn't have the face is more beautiful, more valuable in some way. But at a more macro level, beauty trends have always changed, fashion trends change, and to make such permanent changes is a bit terrifying. So to sort of answer your question about the trend.
But even with that, it's funny you say that. Like the other day, I was interviewing a very big headed up makeup conglomerate. And I said to her, since we're talking, maybe I should ask you, what do I do? The side of my face that has a significant scarring, my eyebrows are turning white.
Oh,
yeah. And she was like, well, you could tattoo them. You can tattoo them. And then I thought, oh, well, what shape would I tattoo them? Or you could dye them. I'm like, well, what shape would be popular? I mean, I remember the 80s with the soup, I don't remember. I shouldn't say the year. There was the year of the super skinny, the pencil brow. Then there was the bushy, Brooke Shields, thick brow, that everyone wanted. But if you had already tweezed everything off with the pencil brow, good luck trying to get the thick brow back, because it just doesn't work that way. And then I think of tattoos where people face tattoo. It's very permanent.
Very permanent. Yeah. It's a great way it's very permanent. And I do think that there'll be a bit of a trend to sort of undo these, like a plastic surgeries of maybe of uniqueness or of undoing certain things, because that's how everything goes. But it does also relate to really where this is developing for me next, where I am focusing on more men, because this is not a teenage girl on TikTok problem. This is something that is impacting everybody and increasingly impacting men. So in the same way I made the series with the Miss Universe contestants from all over the world, having these glorified symbols of femininity, I'm working with soldiers from around the world to do men and these, symbols of masculinity, almost your toy soldier versus your Barbie that we're looking at here.
Oh,
so it's I'm getting very into the insecurity of men in our day and age, which is, like I was saying earlier, surprising and disconcerting. It's something that as women, I think we're very familiar with, but men had escaped this for a long time. And I'm curious as to how someone looks is becoming more important than what they do for men in recent years.
I think about that all the time, and it's funny when I started blogging as Silver Disobedience. And, maybe I'm fortunate. Maybe I'm just mentally in a different state. I don't know. When people talk about age discrimination, I've always been a believer that, you have to welcome that. I come from the school of thought, like my suit of armor's on, that criticisms from other people are information about them. You're getting critical thoughts from the other person that you can choose to agree with or not. And if you agree with their critical thought, then maybe there's something you want to do in yourself to change it. But otherwise, I just think, oh, that's an interesting critical thought from someone, and I kind of, maybe I trained myself with it, to kind of step back and be once removed, because it's painful to me when somebody says, well, I'm looking so old. I'm like, it's a part of life.
Yeah.
We don't, it's just in the newspaper regularly, you see the biohacking, all these things people are doing. Well, how much, I interviewed an actuarial a few weeks ago, and the actual biological age of people is slowing down. It's not getting longer despite all this stuff that people are doing. So why is that? Is it all these chemicals people are putting into their body are actually slowing things down? I don't know. I don't have the answer. Is it stress? Is it the COVID factor? Is it isolation? There's a zillion things that could go into it. But how much longer are we going to live?
Right. Yeah, the longevity movement is another one of these tech obsessed things that I think is driving the desire for youthful looks amongst men. But I also think that there's almost like there's no way to win. I think especially as a woman, like you either look too young or too old, and you're too young to be taken seriously. And then so you're right, like at a certain point you have to take it as information and find ways around these systems. Because there's I found this too when I left tech to become an artist. I was like, oh, what do I wear? Do I look too much like an artist? Now I look too much like a tech person. Now I look too much like the gallery assistant. Now I look, like too much like I'm like not the artist. Now, and what I found is that it's a game. It's a game that I can't win. I just need to do whatever I feel like. Yes. Because there's no winning that game. And the best thing we can do is be confident in how we do look, because that definitely comes through whatever age it is, whatever it is that you're dressed.
Yeah. I think of, if I had to go through the list of like people I think look really interesting or sexy to me, or who I'd like to have a conversation with, I mean, one for sure would be Helen Mirren, and she's, got some wrinkles. She's got the gray hair, but it's like how she goes into that role. And, I have no idea what she's like in person. Maybe it's 100% an act, every scene you see, but she, that willingness to portray that so openly. And then I got a kick out of Dr. Ruth all these years. I joke with people. I say, well, I'm going to be like the Dr. Ruth without the sex part when I get older. I'm not going to be talking about sex. I'm going to be talking about ourselves, but I'll be that crotchety woman, who giggles and laughs and finds things amusing. I want to see the twinkle in someone's eyes more than I want to see what they're, and give me a good scar. I'm fascinated. I'll be the elephant in the room that says, tell me about that scar. How'd you get it?
Right. And story. I just think that happy people look way better, right? Like, and happiness creates wrinkles. It does. Like, these are my biggest lines, my wrinkle lines here, or happy or smiley lines, whatever. But when someone's just a still image, happiness is sort of hard to convey, but you get 3 seconds, right? Yes. And you can totally tell. And that, I don't know, what's causing us to not live forever, which is what we've been going for and all of this. I just think that the stress around trying to make it happen has to be a diminishing factor. So
yeah, I think it is a diminishing factor. And do you want to live for, I guess I've never met the 100+ year old that I would want to be. At some point, I think you just say, okay, I've had enough. It's cool. I can exit now. This was a fun run. I enjoyed everybody. I'll miss you. Or maybe I won't because I have no idea what's happening next. It might be even cooler. And why did I delay it?
Yeah, I mean, it's of all the things I'm going to worry about later today, it's not on the list, it turns out.
With your artwork, you're now okay. So you focused on women. You're looking at men. You're looking at the different ways men are viewing themselves. What are some of the keenest takeaways you've gotten from that?
So we're definitely very early on in this process, and it is very different to be doing this with a subject that, even when I was working with the Miss Universe contestants, there's a lot of their experience that I could identify with because I was a woman. Mm-hmm. And to be interviewing men and working with these soldiers, talking to them about these concepts of masculinity, what I'm increasingly seeing is a pressure to look the part. And that people reference a lot of YouTubers, they reference a lot of the manosphere podcasters. And I do think that men have, I know this, what do they call it? The epidemic of male loneliness, harder, whatever the causation, men have fewer friends. We're now at a point in parts of the world, especially in America, where successful women are completely fine being single, but it's the men who want the partner then. And it is a big power shift that has left men feeling in need of friends, in need of mentors. And the simulacra of friendship that occurs in some of these digital spaces, I think is a big part of this. Is how do I become someone who has friends, who has a platform, who has a voice? And looking the part is becoming an element of that. But it's a little bit it's a little bit confusing to me at this point, which is why I'm so curious about it, why I'm sure that the work will be so powerful, is because it feels like I've framed the question, but not yet arrived at the answers.
That's extremely thought-provoking, and it makes me think in some ways of pendulums, what you said, because, you know, I hear people say we have to get away from a patriarchal society, which, whatever. And then, you know, now we have women saying, I don't need men. And as you said, you have men saying, you know, I'm wanting more friends and companionship and wanting to connect. And it's like, what does this say for society? I always believe extremes inform the middle, and that most people are in the middle, but we watch these extremes and we take a little bit in, and we watch the extreme over here and take a little bit in. And then most of us are in this middle saying, you know, I just want to really be in a nice relationship. I want to like have somebody I can talk to and have fun with, and they have, you know, do what they like to do. And I like to do what I like to do. But when we get together, it's cool and we can laugh and have fun and, you know, maybe throw some children into the mix and, you know, live a nice life.
Yeah, I think the pendulum thing is a really good analogy. I think about it in terms of is it Neil Gorsuch's book, The Fourth Turning, where we're reacting to the societies that have come before us. And so we are on a swing right now in both terms of femininity and masculinity towards what is, you know, for lack of a better term, say, a more traditional aesthetic, a more traditional role. And that increased the trad wife thing, the cultural shift that is at least being talked about or glorified in our obsession with Mormons on television, like whatever these things are. And I live in Utah, so I'm very aware of that. Here in Utah, obviously a very Mormon state, and we have the highest per capita rate of plastic surgery of any state in the country. And it's because of this very strict idea of beauty and homogenization that culture is a big part of. Because I'm sure you think of like it's mountains and outdoors and self-reliance and all of this, but there is a very strict visual look to that in a dominant part of the culture here in the state overall that, I would have thought it was like California, New York, something like
Yeah,
that.
you just shocked me.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy out here. Also, like beauty services out in Utah are like more expensive than they are in New York City, and I think it's again just a demand thing. Who knows? But the whether it's the cycles of turnings or the pendulum, it's not going to be forever either way, and we're reacting to reactions. And I think your point is great. I think most of us just want to feel good in our own skin. We want to be with people who respect us and make us feel great. And the broader cultural conversations and the context in which we enter are going to be in the same way like Disney movies for me were like, oh, this is what romance is. This is what it means to be a woman. You have to be Jasmine or Cinderella or whatever. Who our young people are looking to today? They're YouTubers, they're influencers, and they're building their own ideas of themselves and relationships and gender roles from those paradigms, and also reacting to their parents, because nobody completely wants their parents' lives. So how do I do this differently? And then we go like this.
Oh my gosh, Gretchen, these podcasts always go so fast. I would love to continue speaking with you, but we are at the end of this show. And I have to say, I think you're brilliant. I think you're not just a creative person, you're an incredibly profound, deep thinker. And
thank you.
I mean, I definitely want to interview you as you get into your next realm of your artwork. So I hope you'll do another interview in the future. And I'm going to be watching what you do closely, because you are so articulate in your thinking and your keen observations of humanity.
Thank you.
And your art is fascinating.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak about it in depth. I know we spoke a little bit about this before the show, that I'm so thrilled for the opportunity to bring this conversation outside of the fine art world. And I love the stories about the children's book and the Twilight Zone and the different cultural references you've brought into this. It really expanded this in the way that I was very much hoping. And thank you for making my work a part of your podcast.
Well, thank you. And I can tell you this is going to be interesting, because I have a big following in the financial world. And when you said, you're getting some of the soldiers, sailors, and airmen into this new campaign, I thought was going to guess, if you said, so I'm taking men, I would have said on Wall Street. Yeah. And so you surprised me. This is going to be interesting.
I considered Wall Street as well, but I was also looking for something that's international and the same and different nationally. So, I mean, Wall Street's not out of the question because there are different exchanges. But yeah, we're gonna do soldiers to start with.
Fascinating. My guest today has been Gretchen Andrew. She is a multimedia artist that blends tech, Facetune, glitter, paint, and more. I mean, you have got to follow her. All her links are going to be below this podcast. Please follow her. Share this with your friends. I'm Dian Griesel. I'm also known as Silver Disobedience. This is the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. Hit subscribe. I just get the coolest guests on the planet, and Gretchen is absolutely one of them. So thanks for tuning in, Gretchen. We're going to move over to the green room.
Great. Thank you, Diane.
Thank you.